So as you can see from the first slide, 10 principles to build a solid marketing and sales strategy. And as some of you guys know, I work with a hell of a lot of B2B businesses, whether it's recruitment, marketing, like finance, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of us are always looking for some form of like magic wand or some new fancy fucking technology that's going to just completely change the game. But whether it's my businesses or someone else's business, I just use these 10 principles and I use it as a bit of a scorecard. And I'm very, very confident and have been for years that if there's a gap in terms of things functioning extremely well and growth being predictable and sales where we want it to be, it'll be a gap in these 10 principles. So from a top level perspective, it's fairly simple, but there's always a difference between simple and easy, isn't there? And there's certain different things that we need to run a fair few experiments to get right along the way. So I'll talk you through those 10 principles as we go through things, but I've probably made some notes on this, so I've not run through this slide again. So think about what you want to get out of today. But what I would recommend is pen and pad. The best thing I think to do on this workshop is actually score yourself out of 10 in each of the areas. So I'll run through it and ultimately we can start seeing where the gaps are, because what we can't do a lot of the time, whether we're consulting for businesses or we're running our own businesses, we've got limited resources, we've got limited energy, we've got limited capital. So we can't all of a sudden understand some of this stuff and then basically upgrade all scores to a 10, because it'd be absolute bullshit. No one's ever at a 10 for every single area. And this is very much, for me, it's an infinite game, because things change, the market changes, data changes, customer needs change, all the rest of it. So it's an infinite game that we can always use. So feel free to take this, rob this, use it as a health check in your own business as well. And the other thing that I've got on there as well is we can look at this from a company perspective in terms of some of the things that I'm talking about, but we can also, if we've got teams and we've got divisions, for instance, we can look at breaking it down to a divisional level, and we can also look at it from a personal level as well. So I'm just going to put a couple of you on mute. I think I can hear myself coming back, which isn't a nice, it's not nice to hear your own voice, is it? So there we go. So I'll get kicking on, guys. So if there's anything that I mentioned in this session as well, so I've got a load of supporting assets, worksheets for pretty much every aspect of these 10 principles. So if there's anything I mentioned, feel free to get in touch with me afterwards and say, oh, you mentioned that worksheet or whatever, Rich, and I'll happily share it with you as well in terms of what can help with this as well. So we'll start off with the basics, which we should all understand, but a lot of the time, sometimes we just need to kick up the arse on the basics as well. But first and foremost, there's going to be a couple of theories that I'm going to explain to you. And a lot of the time when I work with people, I don't want to work with them forever. Not because I don't like them, but I'd rather just teach them how to fish rather than go in and do it for them all the time. And I think a lot of the time when a lot of some of the basic top level fundamentals and theories like hit home, it's a bit like, okay, let's just apply them to everything. And we're all smart people, so we can all do it essentially. And some of these things are a bit of a reminder as well. So the first theory I'm going to speak to you about is actually one by a psychologist called Robin Dunbar. Has anyone heard of this theory before? Just raise your hand. Sean, good to see you. You've snuck in there, mate. So if you haven't, I'm going to explain this really, really simple theory. And when I first heard this, I was like, fucking hell, this is good in terms of marketing, sales, brand building activity, essentially. And it's ultimately about the cognitive limits we have as human beings in terms of our human relationships, essentially. So at the very front end, we've got our inner circle, which typically is 5. If you've got a few more kids, then might be a bigger number than that. But typically we have 5 people who we'd consider as our inner circle. And then at the extreme of the other end, typically our brains can put a name to a face of 1,500 people. And this is where personal brand, whatever you want to call it, but personal branding really does come in, because ultimately, if we go to a real extreme, Elon Musk, for instance, celebrities, like there'll be millions of people that can put a name to their faces. But those as an individual will still only be able to cognitively recognize 1,500 people and put a name to a face. Maybe our brains are becoming more advanced. Some would argue that they're becoming less advanced since this study as well, which I probably would. So it's really important to think about this in terms of actually, from a company perspective, but also a personal perspective. First and foremost, what we're looking to do is get some visibility. Because if people don't know who we are in the first place, it's very, very unlikely, near impossible, that they're not going to buy our stuff. So we're looking to penetrate those circles. And I certainly don't want to be a celebrity and for everyone to know me. It's about just the right people as well. And I think this is where some people get it wrong, isn't it? They want to be known by everyone. But actually, as long as the people in your target audience are starting to put a name to your face, we can get in that next circle, which might be acquaintances that you remember how you met. So some of you guys today might be a case of Andy, Jamie, JP. Oh, actually, we met on that Zoom meeting. Like, great. Like, penetrated that circle a little bit, and those relationships become a little bit closer. So from a top level perspective, for me, really, really simple thing, but it's just understanding some of these basics. It's okay, this is where I need to go. And how can I get into people's circles? And how can I get further down there, essentially, with our marketing, our sales activity? One thing, if you've jumped on workshops with me before, like, I don't like to silo like marketing and sales. Like in this day and age, it's just one revenue generation department. And if we're all world-class marketers and world-class salespeople, then absolutely fantastic. And if our team are that as well, then brilliant. So from a marketing and sales perspective, and this isn't hard and fast because nothing ever is, but I kind of just like to separate, like, marketing is one-to-many and sales is one-to-one. And if we've got that in our heads, like, pretty much a lot of our activity will probably fall in the marketing camp, but let's not worry about that too much. And I'll fly through a lot of this today because the last time I think it took 90 minutes. So forgive me if I'm kind of like flipping through some of this stuff as well. So this is something else that I like to speak to people about. And you've probably seen it with a lot of like sales and marketing theory, know, like, trust. Like, ultimately, what we need to get people to do is know us, obviously, hopefully like us, hopefully trust us more. Now, probably like is the least important one. I still fly with fucking Ryanair now and again, and I hate them. But I know them, and I kind of trust that they'll get me to my destination, maybe not on time. But like that know and trust thing is super, super important when we're making buying decisions, isn't it? What I've added to this, and I like to call it a scale, because ultimately it is a scale. We can start on maybe 2% and ultimately nudge people along. I've added perceived value on top of that as well, because everyone, again, is like, oh yeah, I just need to be known. I need to be visible and posting pictures of dogs and all the rest of it to get loads of vanity likes on LinkedIn and all the rest of the platforms. It doesn't matter. Like, there's loads of people that we know and are visible, but ultimately the perceived value is fucking shocking. So we're never going to spend money with them. We're never going to trust them. We're never going to make buying decisions with them. So it's just kind of like some of these fundamentals in terms of, look, yeah, visibility is obviously important. We need to get it out there, and sometimes we need to play to that a little bit. But ultimately, perceived value and trust are the two biggest things for me. So it's a scale, isn't it? So what, in terms of a mindset, in terms of getting going, and there's a lot of the time with like a lot of marketing activity, there's no like real short-term wins, but we can judge every single email, every single social media post, every single activity, workshop, sales call, whatever we're doing. And ultimately, just as racking up credits here, okay, yeah, I think this will hopefully make my audience think I'm a little bit more valuable. I think this will hopefully get them to know me a little bit more. Now and again, they might like me. Hopefully, they'll trust us a little bit more. So this PKLT touchpoint scale is something that I'd think about, particularly when we're looking at kind of like outbound activity. So we're talking DMs, emails, outbound activity, and a lot of people are like, yeah, just do the numbers, hit as many people as possible. However, what I want you to think about when we're doing that sales activity is very much, and this is why everyone's against pitch slapping and all that type of stuff. It's a case of, if someone connects with me and sends me like a really long shit sales message, like, yeah, actually, I'm going to know them more because I didn't know them before, but the perceived value has gone down. So it's a case of how can we make these touch points better? And for me, because we're all in B2B, it's always of the mindset of like, we don't want to be seen as salespeople. We want to be seen as trusted advisors. And a lot of the time we want to think about, okay, would let's call it £1 million trusted advisor behave like this and act like this? And I think if you look at most kind of like multi-million-pound consultants and advisors and all the rest of it, they're still doing shitloads of activity. They've probably sent more emails than anyone else. They probably do more marketing than anyone else. So it's not always about actually, well, I can't do that because I'm going to be perceived like that. It's about the journey that we're taking people on, and how would people behave. So I'm big on terms of like, look, understanding what activity is kind of like the brand building stuff. So separating, right, that's building my brand. It's knocking people on these credits out there. But ultimately, a lot of people rely on that as well. We've still got to nudge people and basically start conversations. We're starting conversations in a way that's not me, like come and buy my stuff and all the rest of it. It's ultimately how many conversations can we start with people? And people forget that bit. They think, oh, I'm going to do a bit of personal branding now and marketing now, and I'm just going to live off inbound leads forever. Unfortunately, it's not that easy unless we maybe do have 1 million followers in a certain target market or whatever, which I don't think any of us are at. It's a case of understanding both activities. Are we brand building, or am I going out there and starting conversations? And we could go further down the line in terms of what we can do with those conversations, blah, 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 but that's probably something for another day as well. So just understanding a lot of this really helps when we're building a plan and also getting out there and doing the activity, because I think a lot of people, like, well, I've worked with a lot of recruiters in the past. It's an industry that I've lived in for a long time. A lot of the time, like, and even sales environments, we were so drilled into this month's quota. Like, is it revenue on the board this month? But we also need to be thinking, okay, is my activity helping next month and the month after and the month after that? And I think personal brand needs a rebrand to personal credibility. Because I think we've all lost faith in like personal branding gurus and all the rest of it. Ultimately, we're looking to increase our credibility, and where our credibility is higher, everything else is fucking easier. Like, we send a message, people respond more, response rates go up. So it's about understanding both sides of the coin a little bit in most situations, like us when really we're small business owners. Bit different for Steve Bartlett or some other influencer out there when they've got a certain following, but ultimately we're small business owners and we've got to make the most of what we've got, but trusting the process a little bit is a big part of it as well. So a couple of really basic theories, but for me, understand them, everything else kind of like, yeah, hits home a little bit more as well. So I'm going to start off with the basics in terms of the rest of these principles as well. Now we've done those theories, and I will keep an eye on the clock as well. So the number one basic principle that we're all aware of, but I want you to score yourself out of 10 on this. And you're not allowed to give a 7. And then I want you to think about maybe off this session today, because we won't have time to go through it today, we can start thinking about what's in the gap. So if I've scored myself a 5 on any of these principles, or even an 8, whatever it is, there's a gap, you're aware of a gap. 99 times out of 100, you know what you need to do yourself. It's just being present about it and understanding and putting a plan in place. So think about how you score on these things that I'll run through, and then start thinking about, okay, why have I scored myself a 5? Okay, what would it be if it was a 10? What are 3 action points that I need to take to start working on this? And ultimately, those action points are going to start giving us a little bit of a mini plan in terms of moving forward. So principle number 1, you can see on the screen, you probably read it. So just absolute clarity on ideal targets. So the more targeted we are, ultimately, the big word is about being relevant for people. And that's it. We're all buyers. Like, a lot of it is about relevancy. The other thing about is resonating with people as well. So we've got a total addressable market. Within that is our ICP, so ideal customer profile, which is probably a small part of that total addressable market. And number 1 is being relevant, but then number 2, we can start thinking about, okay, am I resonating with these people? So that allows us a little bit to be a bit like, well, I don't give a fuck about certain people. So and again, maybe allows us to be a little bit more authentic at times as well. So hopefully the stuff I post on LinkedIn, workshops, how I speak to my mates and all the rest of it is nothing really changes. And if people don't like that for me, I'm pretty cool with it because I wouldn't want them as a client anyway. So it's about absolute clarity on your ideal targets, but getting super, super specific. And it's not always a case of, and it's a good starting point is demographics, obviously. We all know riches in the niches and all the rest of it, inch wide, mile deep. Look, we all understand that. We've been around the block enough. But actually, it doesn't always have to be demographics. Like we can position ourselves around a problem, a belief, a shared enemy. Like there's loads of different options to that. But the more clear we get on that, the more confident that we can get as well. And one thing I say a lot to my clients as well, like people are still scared of going really deep on getting absolute clarity. Like most of us nowadays have got the whole of fucking planet Earth to go at. Like it's not like back in the day where a lot of us were local businesses and we had a certain mile radius. Like most of us with what we offer can add value to, in terms of geographical location. There could be someone sat on here today, probably not from West Coast US, but could be someone sat at the other side of the world. And I might send this recording to someone in Australia. Like we've got the whole of planet Earth to go on. So think about this one. And I know it's basic, but it's super important as well because it'll give us confidence in terms of everything else as well. So absolute clarity on our ideal targets. And it doesn't always have to be specific demographics. So it doesn't have to be a niche vertical or whatever, maybe, but who exactly are we selling to? And probably the most important question is as well, who aren't we fucking selling to? Like that's a great exercise. Like who do we not want to sell to? Who don't we want as clients? Because we'll probably get a little bit more confident in what we're doing after this as well. So simple one to start on, but again, a lot of this is going to be a bit of a sense check along the way. So there's a slide there. What's in the gap? What's missing? A few action points. And I'll send you this presentation across afterwards as well. So that's important for principle number 2, which is if we're going to resonate and we're going to be relevant, we need a really deep understanding of their current symptoms right now. So I like people to understand the difference between pain points and symptoms, because as human beings, all of us, a lot of the time, we don't know the real problem and we don't know the real pain, but we do know the symptoms of it. And that's in terms of like, from a marketing perspective, is absolute gold dust as well. So I believe in the businesses that I work with, I recommend that we've got a system for this. So things change. Ultimately, people's symptoms change, different pain points at different times, depending on what's going on in the market as well. So have we got a system in place to make sure we've got a deep understanding of their current symptoms right now? I've got a document and worksheet, which I'll happily share with you, which I call the 25-25 exercise. And it's the least exciting exercise to do ever, which is why most people don't do it, which is exactly why we should do it. Because people who do this, the marketing, the sales, the message becomes so much easier, even when we're creating products, service packages, or whatever. So it's really simple. I want you to think about your ICP, 25 pain points that they have right now. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What is keeping them up at night? What's going on in their heads? And this is great, why we should be like, the more conversations we have, we might not be closing sales, but if we're getting this information, it's fucking gold dust for us. And then off the back of those problems, I want us to think about 25 symptoms of those. So let's keep it really simple. You probably can't see because of the Zoom lighting and stuff, but this part of my beard's going really grey. Like that going grey is probably a pain point. What's the symptom that might cause fucking hell, I'm feeling old, lacking confidence, lacking self-esteem. Someone can sell me beard dye or whatever, but actually the best off marketing to the symptoms of those problems. Does you going grey make you feel, are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? You see B2C marketing, they're absolutely great at it, but I've drilled that point enough. So 25 problems, 25 symptoms. If we're looking at writing brand messaging, positioning, content strategy, the whole lot, do that, brainstorm it. If you've got a business partner or a team, do that with them. and we'll never be short of content or ideas again. And that's a lot of the time, isn't it? Like people I work with, well, I don't know what to post. I can't post volume because I never know what to think. Like have this as like a dynamic document. So maybe use a Google sheet or whatever that I've had a phone call. They said they're suffering with this a little bit. I pressed on it. These are the symptoms. I'm going to add that to my dynamic document. And then it gives us everything that we need in terms of ammunition moving forward, essentially. And also, a business is just a solution to a problem. That's all it is, isn't it? In very simple terms. It's just a solution to a problem. So the more we understand it, the more we're going to resonate. And I think I could go on forever about this because it's super important. But where we really win is if we can articulate a customer's problem better than they can, then that's when they trust us. It's like, fuck yeah. Yeah, this is what I've been suffering with, and they get it more than me. Okay, maybe I need to speak to these guys as well. So that I'd have that down as a monthly task personally, and always recommend that as well with the people that I work with as well. So number 2 is that give it a quick score out of 10, and then maybe after this, think about what's in the gap. So the other basic that I want to think about is like laser focus, brand, position, and message, which is ultimately driven by those first 2 points, isn't it? So if we've done the first 2 points right, this is a lot easier. We know how to resonate with them. We know how to be more relevant. So thinking about, is that laser focus right now in terms of our brand, position, and message? Because ultimately, we can create visibility and all that type of stuff. But if we're not communicating our value right, we're going to lose, and it's going to be hard, particularly from marketing activity when people start checking us out on what we do and all that type of stuff. So positioning is something I always bang on about. And I think it's one of the big wins that we can have in this day and age is making sure we're positioned correctly. And people lose sleep about what positioning means and blah, 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 blah. The way I describe it is how you articulate your value. It's as simple as that. Like, how good are we at articulating the value that we bring out to the marketplace? And then we can start looking at other things in terms of evidence and all that around it as well. Loads that we could bang on about that, like separate workshop for that all along in terms of like how to differentiate, when to differentiate, whether it's worth differentiating, like whether it's worth just being better. But think about where you're at in terms of your brand position and your message at the moment. Rate it out of 10, potentially what's in the gap. Can we add a couple of points on there? Can we upgrade that? Here's some questions as well. So feel free to take a picture of this or screenshot it. So there's 9 positioning questions there that I absolutely love. So what's a big problem that you solve? Who do you solve it for? How do you understand their problems better than the competition and better than themselves as well? How do we articulate them? How do we solve the problems effectively? What makes us different or better? As you can see there, so fucking what? Because when we say, oh yeah, we're different because of X, Y, and Z, everyone's just thinking in their head, so fucking what? I'm not really bothered. So if we can answer that question, we're winning. What can we do to be a part of their industry rather than just being a supplier to it? Really, really interesting question, a really powerful one when we think about it in terms of our marketing activity as well. How can we push as many people up that PKLT touchpoint scale? Great positioning questions. Who is their enemy? So who's your enemy? And people start thinking about competition here a little bit, like, oh, like I work in recruitment, so fucking Hayes are my enemy. But actually, it's a lot of the time it's about a principle, a way of working, like behavior within the industry or whatever. Like, what's the enemy that we're here to battle against? And then on the flip side, like, what do we stand for as a brand or a person? What do we champion? So think about those questions there. There's probably more than 9, so I've added more there, but feel free to screenshot those. And I think if we can answer those really effectively, then our positioning is probably in good shape as well. So moving on, number 4. So once we understand all that, and I always see this as like having the best shop in the world with all the best products in it and the best staff in there and the best customer experience, blah, 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 blah. If it's stuck in a place that no one sees it and it's getting no footfall, then we're still not going to make any money. And a lot of people will just concentrate on that stuff and not actually get out there as well. So think about how then you're getting in front of people. What's your promotional strategy? What's your outreach strategy? What's your advertising strategy? And there's loads of ways to skin the cat. I wrote something the other day in terms of like cold calling, email, paid ads, social selling, like community building. Like a lot of people like, oh, that one doesn't work, which is absolute bollocks. They all fucking work if we're good at them, and they all don't work if we're not very good at them. So it's understanding like, okay, what are we going to focus on in terms of our advertising outreach strategy? Because it's all advertising at the end of the day. And there's something here on metrics as well that I generally think most small business owners really, really complicate. So in terms of most metrics, and unless a business is getting loads bigger and we can look at things in more detail, of course we can. But the main metrics I look at is inputs, appointments, sales. That's it. So ultimately, we can reverse that backwards, think, how many sales do we want? The answer to that is probably unlimited, but actually we need to be realistic. How many sales can we handle and give an absolutely amazing experience in terms of the resources that we've got right now? Okay, we start understanding that. How many appointments do we need typically to hit those sales numbers? And this, depending what industry you're working in, can be changed a little bit. So appointments for me, is a really important word. And all it is I've got a specific time in the diary with someone who's agreed to speak with me. And I really don't give a shit if it's a telephone call, a Zoom call, or a face-to-face. It's actually someone wants to listen and there's some intent there. So appointments are really important because it could be, well, we might have a salesperson who says, well, I've had 45 conversations today, but if those 45 people didn't want the call and aren't fucking listening, then it doesn't matter. That's actually an input. An appointment is a scheduled time with some intent. And for me, that is like the key indicator. Everything good in business and probably also life as well comes off the back of a real life human conversation at some point. And I'm a big fan of like quick appointments, because ultimately, who decided that a Zoom meeting needed to be 59 minutes and 57 seconds? Like, if we're looking to get people's time, a lot of the time it's a case of, like, if someone pitches me and they want an hour of my time, sat on Zoom as well, I'm a bit like, fuck that, that's the right effort. But if someone said to me, can I grab you for 10 minutes on the phone, Richard? And they offered me some value in exchange for that 10 minutes, I'd be like, what have I got to lose? I can do it while I'm getting my steps in or whatever. And they've got a chance to build a relationship then. So I'm a big fan of like not asking for too much, particularly in the early stages of kind of like the sales process as well. And then obviously the first one is just inputs. And we can look at those inputs. We won't concentrate on them today. So it might be DMs, it might be email marketing, it might be social media posts, it might be telephone prospecting calls, it might be paid ads. Like, it's that activity that we're taking to the market that we're in control of. And if we get in a position, eventually when we start tracking these, and this is why I like to simplify it, because if it's not simple, we won't fucking track it. Let's be honest, we all know that. So if we start tracking these numbers and think, you know what? I now know if I do X of this, Y this, Z of this, that typically means X amount of appointments. That typically leads to X amount of sales. That's when we've got things more predictable. So principle number 4 is understanding what your inputs are and then starting tracking that as well. So again, really simple stuff, but if people are struggling, majority will be in those basics as well. And we're going to get some other stuff in this as well that hopefully starts making a lot of sense as well. So, and this is like, you've probably seen this. So nicked it off Hormozy, which he's got some great ways of explaining sales and marketing in really simple terms. There's only like 4 ways really when we break it down. There's different channels and different tactics, but in terms of like promoting things, we've got warm outreach, we've got cold outreach, we've got free media, which is the content we post, and then we've got paid advertising. Like, ultimately, that's the 4 different ways, isn't it, in terms of getting in front of people? What I've added to this is a middle bit in terms of actually that's really simple, but some of the other stuff that I'm going to get onto will hopefully make us understand like a top level strategy a lot better as well. So positioning, value stack, evidence, offers, and personal credibility and all that type of stuff. Because yeah, that credibility thing is so important. Like, someone who's just starting out and has 0 credibility might need to do 1,000 touch points. Whereas, listen, again, Richard Branson knocks on my door this afternoon and wants an hour of my time, he's going to get it. Any other cold caller is not going to get it. So we need to really remember that personal credibility thing and building it up, which I'll get onto as well. So give that a score out of 10 as well. And then I'm going to start talking about assets. So I remember reading somewhere, and it was probably about 10 years ago now, and it was 3 words. And it really, really hopefully has impacted my journey as well, not just in business, but like investments outside of business as well. Like, and all it was income follows assets. And I was like, fucking hell, like it is that simple, isn't it? Like income follows assets, and we can apply that to everything. And the example that I like to give in really simple terms, like we've got, if any of you are from Leeds and you might recognize these places, if not, then you probably won't. So we've got a fucking £3 million mansion up in Alwoodley or whatever. And then we've got a 1-bed bedsit in Beeston. Ultimately, we've got 2 assets there. We could obviously put 1 million times more sales and marketing into the 1-bed bedsit. We could have the best salespeople in the fucking world on it. But it's still not going to rent for more or sell for more than this asset here, is it? So really understanding that in every aspect of business, but outside of business as well, it's like, fucking hell, like it's about asset building. And we can apply this to our sales and marketing as well. Like we need assets to get out there. And I'm going to talk to you about how I look at that personally as well. So I won't go into that slide yet. So I break it down really simple. And this is why you probably heard me like talk about the ATM model or whatever. And this is what I work on. So if we're taking someone from not having a fucking clue who we are to spending some money with us, we need 3 things from them. Their attention, first and foremost, the time, and then the money. So unless we're selling like e-commerce, like cheap products, B2C or whatever, typically we're all in the B2B game and we're selling high ticket stuff. So we need people's time. So we need their attention, we need the money. What most people miss is the time bit in between, which I like to call the dating period. So we can get people's attention. We need different things in the middle to get the time. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail as well. So I'll break this down really simple. And the more assets that we've got in these areas and the better assets that we've got, everything else comes a lot fucking easier as well. So let's get on to that. So attention assets. So that is a lot of the time it's our content, isn't it? It's like getting content out there, but it's also giving stuff for free as well. So we can do this in loads of ways, can't we? Getting other people's podcasts, produce mini trainings, give ebooks away, scorecards, host industry discussions, just give a lot of value away essentially. But attention is kind of that. And again, some of you guys, it's the first time spending a Zoom with you. Like you've probably seen some of my content on LinkedIn and thought, well, hopefully, because you sat here, thought, yeah, some of this is all right. It makes a bit of sense. It might be worth a little bit of my time there. So it's about how are we getting people's attention? And it's easy to think in the social media world, but let's reverse back in the day. Like I started my career in door-to-door sales. It's like, we need to get their attention. That was a knock on the door. And then we need to get there quite quickly with that attention. We needed them to not slam the door shut and help them trust us a little bit. Then we'll get a little bit of the time. And then eventually, once we were pitching our product, we get the money. So nothing's really changed. It's just social media and we can do it en masse a little bit. So I want you to like start thinking about, okay, I'm breaking this down. How do I get people's attention? And this is where the argument about what works and what doesn't work comes into play. Like the same can be said for a cold call, isn't it? It's there to get people's attention. We might get a little bit of their attention and then we've got a proper scheduled appointment, then we've got the time. So there's different ways to do this, but from a marketing perspective, it's about doing it on scale. So we need to work less hard than still going around council estates, knocking on doors, selling TV packages. So think about attention. What assets have you got? And again, could do a full hour on this in terms of how to nail this, what works, how to make sure you get it flowing and all the rest of it. But let's stick to the top level today. What have we got in place at the moment? And what strategy and tactics have we got in place to get people's attention? Rate out of 10. What's in the gap to 10? And then let's start thinking about the time assets that are super, super important. So ultimately for people to start trusting us, we can still sell products without doing this extremely well, but we're probably not going to get paid the value that we're worth because we've not built enough trust and credibility up, and we'll probably be seen as a commodity. And for me, a lot of branding and marketing is about actually, none of us want to be commodities because then we're just competing on price and all the rest of it. Whereas actually, if we build up our credibility and people trust us, we don't need to compete on price. And the other thing is we can do business on our terms rather than working with clients who are just working on their terms, paying us shit money, and it's absolute hell to work with. So think about how you can start getting people's time. And this is obviously an example of how we may do that. But on a little Zoom session, share some insights. I'm getting some time with you guys. So we can do it on a group basis if we've done some of the other stuff well. But actually, if we're just getting kick-started with some of this stuff, let's do it on a one-to-one basis. Like, we're asking people for time. And this is the big thing as well in terms of like, from a marketing perspective, or I've always said when like marketing departments were like siloed, like marketing's job is to create conversations with target customers. That is it. If that's our main focus, we're creating conversations with target customers. Now, what we've got to understand is most people are going out there saying, I want to speak with you because listen to my product, listen to this. I want to tell you this. It's all about us. But everything is just a simple fucking value exchange. So, and again, let's use this as an example. I've asked for 60 minutes of your time today. You've got to be confident that there's going to be 5 times minimum more value in that 60 minutes that you're going to walk away with than the time that you're spending, because we're all spending something, whether it's money or not. So think about when we are approaching people, whether it's on a one-to-one basis, like even the quick 15-minute calls, like I'd love to share some insights. I'd love to share X, Y, Z. Like we're all in niche industries where we're sat on a fucking mountain of IP in our head, which is valuable to some of the people that we're selling to as well. So there's different ways that we can look at this. And again, we can only go in kind of scratch the surface at the moment. How can we start giving people value in exchange for the time? So again, if we want 15 minutes, we're gonna have to provide a certain amount of value. If we want 60 minutes, we're gonna have to provide a certain amount of value. If we wanna go and fucking sit in their office for 2 hours, we're gonna hopefully provide a certain amount of value as well. So really, really important part that most people miss out is getting that right. And sometimes it's a bit of a test, sometimes it's a bit of an experiment, but I'll tell you when it's a lot easier, when you've done the first 2 bits. Like you understand what's keeping them up at night, you understand the symptoms of pain points, because then you know how to pitch to get the time essentially. So think about what assets you can start creating, think about what assets that you've got currently in terms of getting people's time so we can start building that up as well. And yeah, rate that out of 10. If you've got any questions on that afterwards as well and ideas, then let me know as well. So number 7 is the obvious stuff. Like, yeah, we need the money. So yeah, we could go out there and market and get everyone's attention and time, but if we've got nothing to sell them, then pretty fucking pointless task, isn't it? So, but where I look at this is a lot of us are competing as a commodity product. A lot of us are B2B service. So what that means is a lot of us are just exchanging our time for money, essentially. And we've all heard this before. But how can we make sure that we've got a product mindset in terms of, okay, well, they might be tendering with 2 or 3 people at this stage. Let's create something that is specific to the marketplace. Let's add some different bells and whistles in there that are actually valuable and they give a shit about. And it might come back to, okay, what's our enemy? Let's make that as part of our product as well. So again, got limited time here, but understanding that you have probably got a very unique like method, system, mechanism in terms of how you work. What we need to do is package that up. And a lot of this as well is sometimes a main win is just making it really fucking simple. I was doing a group session in Leeds at the Village Hotel the other day. Now we were saying, look, every aspect of the business, if we was like, everything is easy as 1, 2, 3. So every single process in the business, whether it's like internal processes, external processes, if we just had it down as, oh, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. The next stage is easy as 1, 2, 3. Oh, you want to understand my products, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Because the biggest thing for me that, and this is from experience, is that kills sales is not money. It's fucking friction. So I've been there with like a previous agency when we sold websites. And when I started, it was a case of like, we were a B2B service business. We sold websites. Our service was designing and building websites. And when I started out, it was okay, well, we got our niche and all the rest of it. We're doing all right. And it was a case of, well, then it got to the question is like, how much is this website going to cost, Rich? How much is it? How long is it going to take? And I was like, how long's a fucking piece of string? Like, I don't know. But then what we did was created a product, a 5-stage product. So when someone asked that question, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm interested. What next? It's like, okay, we've got 5-stage products. Really simple. Step 1, did we do this? Step 2, we do this. Step 3, we do this. Step 4, we do this. Step 5, we do this. That'll get you desired outcome. And like, fucking hell, that's easy to understand. Yeah. Okay, there's no friction. But what was I doing before? I was saying, well, don't know. I need to sit down and do a discovery session and really work things out. And then I'll go away and blah, 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 blah. And I'd fucking lose loads of deals. Whereas we made that one change and our revenues went like that. Because it was like, okay, I get it. Completely get it. And then basically, because we had a real systemized process, easy to buy, easy to sell, and more importantly, easy to deliver. It's like, we do this, and then we'd start plugging people into different roles. So the delivery got better. It was replicable. It was scalable. So one book I really recommend for B2B service business owners, and some of you might not read it, and it's not like the most popular one on the market right now, and I read it years ago. It's called Built to Sell by John Warrilow. And I read that. I actually listened to it on the audio back, which is quite a nice listen, actually. And I've still got my old notes where I went, okay, what would I do here? I'd go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, implemented it, and had loads of great results as well. So there's loads of tips I can give you in terms of like creating packages, products that just make the sales part a lot easier. But again, probably not enough time today to go into that as well. So have a think about that. And I'd definitely have a listen to that book as well, because it's a good one. I'll have a read of it if you haven't before. So probably haven't got time for that today, but in terms of like money making assets as well, like most, and it's amazing as well, like, and we're all guilty of it at times, we forget the basics. Like most people haven't got a very good fucking discovery session process. So, okay, someone's raised a hand, they're half interested, they want a telephone conversation with us. Like, it's kind of like we're winging it every time. So there's a discovery session process that I implement to the businesses, I do myself. And it's very much a framework. It's not a script, but it's understanding, okay, let's start with goals. What are people's goals? What's the goal behind the goal? The deeper we can dig on all these, obviously, the better. Okay, what's the potential pain that's going to come while we're hitting those goals? While we're trying to do that, where are the challenges? Like urgency, like no one's going to buy unless it's actually urgent to them right now. But we can kind of press on that a little bit. Like, what's it costing you not taking action? Like, if you go 6 months and they're still the same situation, what's potential cost? Like, loads of questions I could give you here, but this is my favorite framework for sales calls. Need. People don't know what they need. And if we try to sell them something a lot of the time that they don't think they need, we're not going to sell them. So it's really important to understand, okay, you've told me all this, you told me your goals, you told me your challenges, you told me whether it's urgent or not. What do you think you need? Like, my favorite question on a sales call, and again, I'm passionate about this stuff, so a lot of it I could go on about as well. I was working out of a mate's office recently. It's like, you always ask that question, Rich. I'm like, fucking good one though, innit? Like, you've found out a little bit of information. Okay, given that, forget you talking to me and you want to solve this. Like, what do you think you need? And then they tell you exactly what they think they need, and hopefully it matches to our solution, and it starts being simple. Trust one's brilliant as well. So a lot of people, you get to the trust stage of the sale, it's like, I need to start pinging social evidence, case studies, and all that type of stuff. But again, it's just a question. Okay, what do you need from me? What do you need to know about me? What do you need to move forward? And most of the time, it's a case of, actually, yeah, I'm all right. I've got everything I need. Cool. All right, next stage then. Whereas most people start talking too much and giving them loads of shit that they don't actually need. I've had people turn around and said, yeah, well, what is it that, and a great question is, what is it that made you reach out? What is it that made you respond? It's like, oh, well, I've seen X, Y, Z. I like this. They start telling you how great you are. What else do you need? Oh, nothing. It's like, okay. So, and then the next thing is obviously qualifying. So I love that process. It's super simple. And this is what I'm about in terms of like every area of the business. It's like, how simple can we just make every fucking part of the process? So again, another session for another day, no doubt. But I think a lot of people do the good work, get people on a call, and then fuck it up. So making sure that discovery process is right, which is part of the money making assets as well. So you might score that at the moment in terms of how systemized and what are conversion rates as well. So moving on in terms of the time we've got, what we've got. So making them stick. So one of the big things in terms of like, for me with sales and marketing is we'll generate leads, get them into our ecosystem, and then do all that hard work. And then if they're not ready to buy right now, they'll leave our ecosystem and they're never to be seen again. So we've done all that hard work and we've fucking wasted it. And it's an old cliche. I don't know where someone got the figure from, but it's probably there or thereabouts. 95% of people are not ready to buy right now. What we need to do is make sure when they are ready to buy, we're front of mind. So a lot of that is like, how can we get people into our ecosystem, and how can we fucking make them stick around as well? And there's various ways to do this as well. So the next principle for me is like, how have we got to nurture an ecosystem? So we can do this various ways nowadays. It might be an email list. It might be manual. It might be a case of that, yeah, back in the day when we're all just hitting the phones all the time, it might be a case of, well, I'll pop a call in every so often. That's cool. I like niche community little WhatsApp groups nowadays. So some of you guys are in one that I've got. It's no work at all. It's all peer-to-peer now. It's brilliant. I think there's about 200 business owners in there. But the good thing I like about WhatsApp groups is you've got the fuckers where the missus is asking what they want for tea. So if you want to get in touch with people and make an offer or whatever, it's brilliant. Like, I rarely read my emails anymore, and most stuff in there isn't relevant. So like WhatsApp groups are brilliant, and we all work in niches. We could all have a niche little WhatsApp group where actually a lot of people are like, well, who am I to like run a WhatsApp group and all that? Just be the host, facilitate it. If you specialize in working with finance directors in the northwest of England, they've got a lot of value to share with each other. Like, facilitate a group, get them networking, put on a little round table now and again or whatever it is. But like a mini WhatsApp group, and then you're just a host. And the way I call it is like, you're the Rolex at Wimbledon. Like, no one's going to centre court for Rolex, but they're fucking there every time you look at the scoreboard. And we can do that in our little pockets and niche industries as well. Obviously, email lists, all that type of stuff, still relevant. Like, a cold email is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people at the moment. But in terms of people opting in, like, it's underutilized at the moment, I think. So adding some value via email, all that type of stuff. So how are we making people stick? How have we got a nurturing ecosystem? Like, how good is it? What is it from score of 1 to 10? What's in the gap? So that'd be another principle if I was coming into your business and acting as a consultant or whatever, that I'd be thinking, right, we need to get that sorted as well. So principle number 9, I probably wrote this on LinkedIn multiple times, like, best marketing strategy ever in the world. Look after your fucking customers. 1, because then they'll stick around. 2, I just see every customer as the opportunity for 10 times more customers. As simple as that. And if we've got that mindset, it's a case of, okay, working with this person, they probably know 10 people as well, or are in the industry, particularly nowadays where everyone collaborates, everything's transparent. Like, let's fucking look after our customers. Like, I always say, like, all we need to do is do what we say we're going to fucking do. And now and again, a little bit more. That's it. And how can we look at these little ways that, oh, we can offer a little bit more here? But the main thing is doing what we say we're going to fucking do. I'm having a nightmare at the moment with suppliers. Like, I've got a solicitor who charging me a fortune for something that I'm on. Fucking never picks up the phone, never gets back to me. Absolute nightmare. I've got a builder who put a sauna in up here, actually, and I loved it. Dodgy electrician. Been there for 6 months. Not fixed yet. I'm fuming. I got COVID a few weeks ago. I was like, I want a fucking sauna, man. I would just want to sweat it out. Like, shit service. Not going to get recommended. Not going to use him again. Like, basics, isn't it? But I would say it's easy to win right now. And I don't want to call it like a generational thing either, but more and more people are getting entitled and, yeah, well, I deserve more and all that type of stuff. Like, the market decides what you deserve, not you, unfortunately. And sometimes we've got to dig in deep. And I also say, like, a lot of the time, like businesses as well, like, I'm still in it for the Unbound community. We're in evidence over profit stage, and that's cool. Did it with a website agency, evidence over profits phase. Like, as long as we get by, make a bit of money, like, once all, like, we've got an amazing portfolio and all this evidence comes in, life will be easy and we can charge 10 times more money as well. So sometimes it's like, you get it in the creative game a lot with like designers and stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, I won't do that little bit of work for free because I'm worth more than that. It's like, well, you're not, because you've not got any fucking business. But actually, it's about how can we really, and I've gone off on a tangent there, as I always do, but once we've got customers, let's look after them. And if we haven't got customers, then let's go out there and give a wow delivery experience anyway, and we'll start getting some more. So how can we deliver better? Like, number 1 rule, B2B service businesses, the clue's in the name, isn't it? Like, service, most people miss it. And obviously you guys give a shit about your business, which is why you sat here today. So I'd like to think everyone sat here, including myself, is different. But the majority out there don't give a shit. Like, it's such short-term thinking. And you probably didn't expect to see this on a sales and marketing strategy, but I'm not going to go into any business and work really, really hard on getting the sales and marketing gear if we're dropping the ball when we've actually got customers. We're just wasting our time. So understanding that is going to provide us a lot of what we need on this final principle, which for me is the biggest multiplier of it all as well. So think about that. Think about what it is out of 10 and what's in the gap as well. So number one business asset, evidence. Simple as that. Evidence, social proof. So just makes everything easier, doesn't it? But we can put a strategy in for that, which includes what I've just talked about, obviously. But how are we collecting evidence? Have we got a system in place? Like, how are we showcasing it? How can we collect more? How can we be better? And again, also a strategy to get more evidence. So years ago, again, like when I'm doing websites, I did a website, absolute cost price for someone. And even our co-founder at the time was like, what the fuck are you doing, Rich? Like, we're going to lose money on that. I was like, yeah, he's part of this network with 250 other business owners. We do a fucking amazing job for this. We'll get paid in future for it. Lived off that network for a long time, made us a hell of a lot of money. And it's a case of like, not every transaction equals a digit in the bank account today. It's like, it's that long-term thinking sometimes, isn't it? I'm not saying, look, we're charities, because we're not. We're all commercial people who want to sell and make money. But how can we get like credits in the bank account for future? Because if we've got that mindset as well, while we're still making money, then we're not going to struggle, are we? Because we're just playing the long game and it's always building up. And a lot of this is all infinite stuff as well. So making sure we've got the systems in the place to, one, be in a position where we can get evidence because we're doing a bloody good job. But then number two, we're collecting it, we're showcasing it, we're using it as well. And like, I'm guilty of forgetting that as well, because I've always got something to say. So I'm always rambling on LinkedIn about stuff. But actually, I should probably post more evidence and case studies and like stuff that the results people are getting and all that type of stuff. So there you go. I've given myself a shit rating there. And I'm going to try and post a little bit more because, again, it's got to be visible, hasn't it? So think about that and the strategy you place that you've got for that. So we've talked a little bit about personal brand as well. So again, I like to call it personal credibility, and trying to come up with like a little bit of an equation in this. So we've got evidence, we've got our network, we've got our influence, and then there's no point having that without visibility, giving value, and also consistency as well. That's where most people fail, isn't it? It's like with anything in life, whether it's the gym, wanting to lose weight, marketing, sales, whatever, like we can go out and do it for a few weeks or whatever, but it's not really going to make a difference. It's like consistency is, unfortunately, it's boring, but it's a secret to most stuff, isn't it? Just understanding what the plan is and fucking sticking to it as well. And sometimes that needs a bit of accountability, being around the right people and all the rest of it as well. So for me, that's what I'd be working on, instead of going to some personal brand guru that's going to give you some templates of, yeah, post these pictures, post a fucking selfie in the sunshine and all the rest of it. And look, am I saying that's wrong? No, because if it gets a bit more visibility, fair enough, but it wouldn't be the number one strategy and the number one metric that I'd be looking at, guys, as well. So again, rate that out of 10. So we've got a bit of time here. So hopefully there's loads of points. And when you review these notes as well, that you've got a mini action plan on it. And then if anyone does want to grab me and pick my brains for 15 minutes or whatever on the back of some stuff, or if there's certain principles that I've discussed today and you think, do you know what? Yeah, be good just to get a little bit of personalized support on this, or I've got a few questions, feel free to reach out to me and we'll try and grab something next week or whatever. If there's any assets that I've got, just ping me a message as well. And then think about like kind of what's next, what's the focus, because you can't do all this at once. Or some of us might do if we've got the capital and resources, but what's next? How are we going to improve this? How are we going to make our life easier? What are we going to do to commit to like solving some of this stuff as well? So I don't have a clue what slide's coming next, so I'm just clicking here, guys. That's it. My only ask, I don't know what that is because it's from another workshop, but it's probably, look, if you found it valuable, do me a favor and post a bit of evidence on LinkedIn and write a post on it. And there's your LinkedIn content for tomorrow or today or a few days time as well. So there you go, guys. So that's it. We've done it in quite good time today. Unfortunately, haven't been able to go in super detail on that and everything there. Obviously, there's a lot of critical ingredients below everything. I think top level strategy is one thing, but then there's thousands of ingredients to get right. And then we hit roadblocks, speed bumps along the way and all the rest of it. And then we give up with some stuff as well. So any additional support you need, you know where we are as well.